All right, Golf Plus community. I think I've finally got this stupid lob wedge figured out. So the lob wedge with like no tweaks on it, like 0% power assistance, 0% everything. So the issue that I was coming up with is it always felt like it was a dead ball, or it felt like it wasn't the solid pinch contact that we know in real life. It kind of like the ball hit higher on the grooves. And that's always really bothered me so much that I was pretty weak between 40 and 80 yards. So finally, one day, a couple days ago, I started messing with it, and I think I figured it out. So I changed the 0% to a 10%. And I think this is the perfect compromise, give or take a percent. I suggest that what I talk about, you kind of dial it in your own clubs. But the reason why I like 10% is because when I golf in real life, the perfect contact is hitting down on the ball, pinching it against the ground, and having it go. And realistically, you shouldn't have to swing that hard for it to go, the 40, 60, 80 yards that we're used to. And this club I have right now is the 58 degree. It goes 90 yards. There's two versions of it, of the lob wedge. It's excuse me, the 58 and the 60. So we're going to kind of go through this. Like I said, I'm looking for, if this video game produces the perfect shot, I shouldn't say perfect shot, the perfect strike, ball impact on the ball, whatever the hell you want to call it, then it should feel like it. Now, if I were to, let's say, go back to 0, okay, let's say I want this to go for 60 yards. And I'll do what I feel like in real life is a 60-yard shot. Which really wasn't that bad. But it felt like I'm hitting out of the light rough all the time. The ball's teed up a little bit on the grass. It didn't feel like that pinch. So now, if I were to raise it up to 10%, because I played with 10%, 20%, 35%, I think, what's the water? All right, so the water's 68 yards. So I'm going to hit a 68-yard shot. But it feels like letting the club does most of the work. Now, obviously, the lob wedge between 30 and 70, 80 yards is very unpredictable. But I think, like, this is the actual setting that I'm happy with. It feels like I let the club do most of the work, and I actually get the ball flight that I want. And so now, if I compared to my regular clubs, like I have distance ranges dialed in on all these clubs. So let's figure out what the distance is on this one. And so if I hit upright and a pretty solid shot, this should go about 75 yards. Maybe I'll learn something. Well, that was a dead ball. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, so 80 yards on a nice upright swing. And with the lob wedge, just like in real life, you want to swing down on the ball. You want to pinch it. You want the divot to be behind the ball. You don't want to hit it. You know, you want the divot to be in front of the ball. You don't want to hit behind the ball. Is what I'm trying to say. Even though you just saw a divot way. All right, so 75, 80 yards is an upright, solid swing. And I'm not even swinging that hard. Previously, if I wanted to get that range, like I would have to really, follow, bring the club back, really dig into the ground, really, try to, almost like I was trying to hit a ball out of deep rough. But now it's more comfortable. One more time. 81 yards. So 75, 80 yards on a normal swing for the carry. And another thing I learned about this game is the steeper the club and the more you hit into it, because if this club is really short, and if I swung up here, it'd be more chance for a dead ball. So I really want to get down into the ball. So let's see if I can hit it 90 yards. And any of these clubs, I have to put it in the back of my stance. So now my right foot's here, my left foot's here. Club is definitely angled down. Definitely pushed it with a little bit of fade. Well, that was 88 yards for the carry. So I'm learning that now I have a 75 to 80 in the middle, and I have 85 to 90 in the back. And I'm not even swinging that hard. So it's a little varied. And I do have a little bit of a backwind, which shouldn't be that much on the lob wedge. But now I'm starting to understand my distances from a lob wedge. Now when I swung a little bit harder, popped out a little bit more. See, that was 91. Okay. But then again, it's a lob wedge. So I've covered 75 to 80 with a more comfortable swing with the 10% power assistance. 85 to 90, and maybe a little bit more on the back of my stance. What is the front of my stance? So I'm playing off my left foot. It's got a little bit more loft to it. I'm assuming this is going to be about 65 yards. Sounded like a dead ball. So that was 53. But what if I swing into it? So that's still that thin hit. Okay. So I'm thinking about 55 yards on my left foot. That one was much solid contact. It was a very high shot. Okay. So I'm not swinging that hard with the lob wedge, which is great for me to know. And I can definitely practice the different ranges. So if I want to hit 50 yards, I can just take my swing, shorten my swing a little bit. So there's 50. And if I want to do 40, okay, that was 30. So basically, I'm just kind of playing around with the field. And it's all situational, too. So if I have like a 40-yard shot and I can bump and run the ball up to where I want to be, then I can hit, low and slow and run it up there. But if I want to do a 50-yard shot where I need to get it to bite, then I can just practice doing my lob wedge. Again, when I'm out in the course, I try not to put myself in this situation. I want a full lob wedge or a full sand wedge, gap wedge, or anything like that. So ideally, I'm still going to follow that. But in the case that I get in this situation, I want to be more comfortable. So I'm going to try to hit a 40. Okay, that was 40 round on the dot. And really, I'm just going down the line. 30, 28. And I'm starting to gauge in all the different yardages for my club. And I feel 10% for me, like I said, is a good contact point for all distances with my lob wedge. Anything more than that, it seemed a little too aggressive. I probably could dial it back a little bit more. But then let's talk about so I set the power range to 10%. So let's talk about chips and pitches. Well, I also played around with, you go into settings, you go into swing, you go into global, and you have your chipping and your sand feel. And if these were both 0% and I had a power assistance on my lob wedge, then just an easy little 10-yard flop would shoot out about 30 yards. And I don't want that to happen. In fact, I'm going to go in the fairway. Okay. So now, after I gauged the power resistance from a lob wedge, I wanted to understand the chipping and the sand to try to get it as comfortable as possible. And I know it's quite a bit, but 80% soft on my chipping is where I'm happy. And basically, a chip shot, I can't remember the actual, but the game gauges a chip shot as a certain mile per hour of club speed. It's very minimal. So if I wanted to do, I mean, this might be a bed. Okay, let's go over here where there's. So if I wanted to still do a little bump and run, because this is St. Andrews and the ball's going to run. It's in the fairway. It was quite, it was almost a pitch shot, but I still felt that pinch on the ground like I would in real life. And that's what I'm looking for, is that pinch. I want the club to do all the work. I don't want it to be like a game and for it to just take off. I don't want it to just be a chunk shot every single time. I'm looking for the club to do all the work and for it to be a pinch off the ground every single time. And so that was a pretty good. I'm very happy with that. I'm hitting it about 13-yard flops every single time. If I want to do a little bit of a bump and run, that's going to run way by. But now I'm happy with that. Same thing from the rough, which is over here. So same thing from the rough. I still want to feel that pinch out of the rough, but I do know since it is the rough, the game's going to gauge it as a little bit harder to get out of. Thought that was going to go in. But my recommendation is to play around with the power resistance of the lob wedge to where you get that pinch. The club does all those work. I'm going to keep on saying that. And then the chipping is the same thing. I have mine down all the way to 80% because of the power resistance on the lob wedge. Now, the last thing will be trying to look for a sand bunker I can go into. I think I can go into and hold 2. Okay, yeah. So give me a second, and we're going to test the whole sand. Because, again, I made the change to the 10% power resistance, and then when I got into the sand, it took off on me. And I was not happy with that. Okay. So now we're in the sand. So previously, with no power resistance or changes on the lob wedge or in the sand shot, I could basically take a nice slow tempo, bring the club up to where it's vertical, and not really force it through, but just kind of swipe through the sand. That was 10 to 13 yards every single time. Now, I can still do the same thing. It's just a nice, sweep through the ground. 10% power resistance on the lob wedge, and my sand feel is 65% soft. Again, play around with it, see what's comfortable with you. Maybe you swing with an even face. Maybe you swing a little bit harder. Maybe you swing a little bit deeper off your left foot, right foot, whatever. But keep on tweaking it until you feel that how comfortable it is. And when you do have the power resistance out of the sand, then you realize it's much easier to go for like a 25, 30-yard sand shot. So even was 13. Now I'm going to try to get in about 20. Well, if I actually swing like I want 20. Okay, so that was 26. But it's just easier to swing along the distance, allowing me to practice and get that feel. So that was 16. All situational as well. If the ball's able to run out, then play run out. If I have to fly it, then things like that. But I'm pretty happy with the lob wedge changes that I made. So now I've played a few more rounds. Even the daily here at St. Andrews, I left myself a few 70-yarders, but I was actually confident that I could get the ball there consistently. But that's it. I just want to kind of share it. I'm much more confident with the lob wedge now. I'm going to continue to practice the different distances, 50, 60 yards, 30-yard bunkers, flop shots, low shots, different things like that. But I wanted to share that with everyone. Hopefully that this can help you. If not, just disregard and do your own thing. But that's my tidbit for today. Hope you all are having a great Labor Day, and hopefully you're enjoying your week, 3-day weekend. And yeah. Topher James signing off, and have a good day, y'all. See you later.